So in this problem, we had to find the period of this equation. So we compared it to the parent function to figure out what our b value is. After we found what our b value is, we input it into the period equation, which is 2 pi over b. So after we put b, it would be 2 pi over 1/4. So in order to divide a fraction, you have to take the reciprocal of the second term. So it would be 2 pi over 1 multiplied by 4 over 1. And that all comes down to 8 pi. So your period is 8 pi.
This is the SHS Precalculus quiz number 14 corrections. We're doing number 2. So the original equation is this. So y equals 4 sine x. To find the amplitude of it, you have to find the a value. The a value, so you do this is like the base formula. So you find the a value is going to be 4. To find the amplitude, it's the absolute value of a. So when you plug 4 into the equation, your amplitude is the baseline of 4. So then your answer will be C.
This is Precalculus quiz number 14, problem number 3. Find the vertical translation of y equals 5 plus 2 sine parentheses 6x plus pi over 6. First step, you have to find the equation, which is d plus a sine b parentheses x minus c sine. After you've written the equation, identify each numbers by letters. So d is 5, a is 2, which is the amplitude, and b is 6, and c is negative pi over 6. Since for this problem we're only looking for the vertical translation, d would be which is 5 is the answer. So which is on the test sheet, it would be a of 5. Thank you.
For question number 6, which one of the equations below matches the graph? We started off by crossing out a because the graph is sine, since it's starting at 0 and this one's cosine. So we started off by crossing out a. We crossed out b because one of the points is -2 and this one is positive, so we crossed out b. And since the period on this one is 4 pi over 3 over 2 periods, we divided that by 2 and got 2 pi over 3, which the period of c would be 2 pi over 3, so it'd be c.
So for number 1, I recognized that it was sine. So what I did is I looked back at the table, and sine always starts at 0. So I looked for the ones that start at 0, which is b and c. And so I labeled those sine. And then after that, I looked at the amplitude of number 1, and it was 1. And the only one that had the amplitude of 1, which is going up and down at the y-axis, was b. So I marked that one number 1. For number 2, cosine starts at 1. So I looked at the amplitude of that one, and it was 1/2, and it wasn't negative or anything. So I found out that it was d. So d and a were both cosine, but 2 corresponded because I had the amplitude at the halfway mark. And so for number 3, the only other one that was sine was equation c, which is why I put that, and had the amplitude of 1/2, as you can see right here. And for number 4, cosine, the only one that was left, and it had the amplitude of 1, which is right here. And that's how I got those.
Trig function over one period. Be sure to include a table of values and label your axis clearly. Y equals 3 cosine pi x.
Okay, so from here you have to determine the a and b value using y equals a cosine bx. We know that a equals the amp, so the amp equals 3. The period equals 2 pi over b, and because the b value equals pi, we write 2 pi over pi, and we get pi as our period.
Pi.
Our period equals 2. From there, we are able to find the x value. Our period equals 2. From there, we are able to find the x value.
We need to get the 4 intervals, so the period is 2. And to get the other one, we do 2 times 1/2, which is 1. And we get half of 1 is 1/2. Then we add 1/2 and 1, we get 3 over 2.
we write 3 cosine, and we get 3, 0, -3, 0, and 3. Now we can graph our equation. Now we can plot our x values: 3, 0, -3, 0, and 3. And that's how you graph the equation y equals 3 cosine pi x.
Okay, so x needs to be by itself, so we will need to factor that out. So that would be y equals 3 minus 6 sine 2 parentheses x minus, and then another minus because it has to be a positive, pi over 4, because 2 times pi over 4 would give you that. And then we just write down the actual equation, which is y equals d for vertical shift plus and minus a for amplitude sine b x minus c for horizontal shift. So we're gonna find our amplitude, and amplitude is here. Going back is -6, which equals 6. B is equal to 2. And then C is equal to negative pi over 4. Which means it has goes a horizontal shift to the left. And D is equal to 3, which means it goes up, vertical shift up. And then we need to find our period. And to find the period, it's 2 pi over b, which equals 2 pi over 2, which that would be pi. Then we need to have our inequality, which is 0 is less than or greater to whatever x is, and then 2 pi, and then we just plug it in, and then x is what's in here, so it's 2x pi over 2 less than 2 pi. So then to get rid of this, we need to divide by 2 to get rid of it. And then we're just gonna move here. So that would be 0, and then x plus pi over 4, whatever is left from here, and it's greater than pi. So now we need to get rid of the pi over 4, because we want x by itself. And this goes away, and this is where it starts, pi over 4. And this is where it ends, which should equal 3 pi over 4. Okay, so now we need to find our 4 intervals plus 1. So having this inequality, this is where it starts, this is where it ends. So we need to start at pi, negative pi over 4, 0, pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, and then 3 pi over 4. And then having the equation already, we need to have x plus pi over 4, because that's the horizontal shift where we start. So plus 4 and negative pi over 4 cancels out to 0. This positive pi over 4 and 0 is just pi over 4. This plus that is pi over 2. Pi over 4 plus 2 pi over 4 is 3 pi over 4. Pi over 4 plus 3 pi over 4 is just pi. And then the next thing we're going to do is the b followed by the horizontal shift, 2x plus pi over 4. And then we're just going to multiply this by 2, and 0 times 2 is 0. That times 2 is pi over 2.
pi times 2 times 2. Pi over 2 times 2 is pi. And then 3 pi over 4 times 2 is 3 pi over 2. And this would just be 2 pi. And now we do sine 2x plus pi over 4. And then we're just going to do the sine of each. And sine at negative pi over 4 is just 0. It's 1, 0, negative 1, 0. And then we have 3, we have negative 6 sine 2x plus pi over 4. So we're just going to subtract it. 0, and we're just going to multiply. Negative 6 times 1 is 6. 0. Negative 6 times negative 1 is 6. 0. And then we have 3 minus 6 sine 2x plus pi over 4. And then we're just going to multiply. No, we're just going to add 3. 3 minus 3. 3, 9, and then 3. Now to graph this, you're just going to use the points for the whole equation, which is this, the last one you did. And so we're going to graph, so it's starting at negative pi over 4, negative pi over 4 at 3. So it goes here. And then 0, negative 3, pi over 4, 3, 2 pi over 4, 9, and 3 pi over 4, 3. So you're just gonna graph this.